Most entrepreneurs spend weeks planning their business strategy, but barely a day understanding the regulations which actually decides whether the company will succeed or stall. Incorporation is just a first step. What really shapes growth are the rules that control how you operate. From banking, visa and compliance to tax, ESR and activity restrictions. Welcome to Incorporate with Confidence, powered by Commitbiz, the podcast where we simplify business incorporation and related services in the UAE, sharing insider insights from over a decade of experience. With me today is Nihas, Unit Head of Commitbiz. Welcome, Mr. Nihas.
Thank you, Femina. Pleasure is all mine.
You have seen the first-hand of the regulatory clarity that can make and break a business, often more than the strategy itself. Nihas, let's begin with something that we both see often. Most founders think that after the incorporation is done, then the growth phase is also set up. But in reality, the real journey begins once the license is issued. From your experience, how big is the gap between what entrepreneurs expect and what the regulatory environment actually demands?
Well, I truly believe there is a massive gap, Femina. Business strategies are very vital and important for a business growth or its resource planning, its branding, its operations, and every department to department. Okay. However, if you doesn't align your business strategies with its applicable regulations on that country, it doesn't take you anywhere. We have seen most businesses struggle just because of their regulatory mismatch. Most of the entrepreneurs doesn't really understand how exactly they should take on their compliances, or let's say on their visa requirements, or even majorly on their business jurisdiction and their activities. This all leads to a strategy failure majorly because it's not aligned with the country's regulation.
So let's break this down. When a new business is set up, what are the major regulatory pillars that most of the entrepreneurs rarely think, but absolutely they should?
That's a wonderful question, Femina. We have seen this oftenly from our entrepreneurs. There are multiple factors to this. However, let me take or emphasize certain points on this. Most importantly, entrepreneurs doesn't really understand or learn how exactly their jurisdiction should be decided. The jurisdiction is a vital decision that an entrepreneur should make while incorporating a business. If this decision goes wrong, your complete business flexibility, your complete business model would not be accomplished in the jurisdiction where you're getting license from. This leads to a stage where your strategies, as we mentioned earlier, doesn't take you anywhere. It also aligns with your business activity. Just by its hears or names, we shouldn't take or opt for a business activity. Activities are always something to be deeply studied or understand its applicabilities on its compliances, on its regulations, on how exactly your business model aligns with your business activity. We've also seen certain entrepreneurs doesn't really focuses on how exactly their future when it comes to office requirements, or maybe certain entrepreneurs wish to have warehouses. Yeah. These decisions go wrong if your jurisdiction is not wisely chosen. And it also takes to a step where entrepreneurs doesn't really look into the fact or give an importance when it comes to banking aspects. Every entrepreneur should understand the compliance requirements, the risk applicabilities, the funding applicabilities on their business activity, which aligns with their business model. As the first point I mentioned, business activity should be wisely or taken closely as per your business model, so that your business can be very well explained to a bank that you're going to tie up with. So you doesn't face any problems when it comes to an actual transaction or when it comes to any red flags being raised from the banks. The same takes to a step where the visa applicabilities comes. Most of them do often opt for a visa requirement, not realizing how their business needs to grow, rather just by deciding on a package. This is something that doesn't need to be applicable based on a package. You should recognize what type of visa quotas you should have down the line, maybe 2 years or 3 years, what exactly is your visa quotas or your number of people to be hired for your business to grow smoothly. We've seen the same approach from entrepreneurs when it comes to compliances. Their business activities may require an anti-money laundering compliances to be followed, which is a vast and deep subject to be looked into. However, the importance not being given rightly for these compliances takes you to a direction where you would be struggling with the compliances, with the issues that arise from the government bodies rather than your business growth.
That was powerful. Now let's talk about growth. How does a company's regulatory decision made during incorporation really impact the company a year, 2 or 3?
I think it's a silent damager, Femina, for the entrepreneurs. What I mean to say is that when a decision was made during their incorporation process, they may not realize until it comes to an action. The decisions as like the jurisdiction, their business model needs to actually fit into that jurisdiction. They may require a warehouse or they may require a port facility. This might not be considered into requirement when the incorporation was planned, which would completely go wrong. This also applies to business activities as well. We've seen entrepreneurs realizing the fact that the activity that they have is not really making sense to their business model when maybe the bank's questioning them. The same even goes to the compliances. When an activity is chosen, the compliances are not really studied well, and it comes to a situation where authorities might say, hey, listen, you doesn't need this kind of an approval for this activity, or you need certain AML guidelines to be followed for an activity, which puts them into a situation they may need to go and create or draft policies, put employees for their compliance requirements and additional set of regulations that needs to be followed, which always put the entrepreneurs to navigate from their initial strategy. So we've seen people or businesses spending up to 50,000 dirhams when they realize it has something went wrong, which could have been fixed from the day one.
That's interesting, Nihas. Most of the entrepreneurs see compliance as a burden that slows their business down. But you often said that compliance can be a competitive edge. So what do you mean by that?
Absolutely, Femina. This is a topic that I often bring up on our discussion with most of our entrepreneurs. A compliant business always seems to have a steady growth. May not be steep, however, they may not need to fear about a downfall.
Correct.
Always a compliant business do see a positive side from the banking perspective. Banks are the one always have questions on your transactions or maybe an additional documentation on a closure of your business. This also takes up to a stage where when you take up a certain approval or a permit for your business operations, let's say you are planning to conduct an event, you need to take an approval from a government body. This is something that also brings into consideration from the government because you are already compliant with the processes or the procedures that your business, which is automatically on the government's good book, and your approval process becomes more easier.
Yes.
When it comes to your renewals or the process that comes on an year or 3, always these processes becomes more faster and easier for you when you are compliant. The government authorities or your clients itself gives you a greater trust and you accordingly build your business.
Correct.
When it comes to client onboarding for your business, this also has a competitive edge. Your customers do have an added trust on your business operations or your business services because you follow a certain set of procedures to onboard your customers.
All right, Nihas. So before wrapping it up, let's do a quick rapid fire round. Short answers, no overthinking, just pure insights.
Let's do it.
Great. So the first question is, biggest regulatory mistake new founders make?
Choosing the wrong business activity. It affects everything.
A big green flag you see when a business is set up correctly?
Bank approval comes faster. That's a good sign.
Your one-line advice to anyone setting up in the UAE?
Treat regulations as your infrastructure and foundation, not as a formality.
You answered it very well. Now let's add some fun element to the questions.
Oh, I've been waiting for this.
If UAE regulations were a person, how would you describe them?
Strict, organized and structured, but surprisingly friendly if you don't mess around with it.
Which compliance rule do entrepreneurs treat like that one gym membership that they never use?
100%, it's UBO. They know it exists, but avoid eye contact.
If a banking KYC officer had a catchphrase, what would it be?
Always just one document, one last document.
What's the funniest assumption people make about business setup in the UAE?
That they think it's like ordering a shawarma. Multiple business activities, one business day.
If you had a great magic button to fix one business setup problem forever, what would it be?
Oh God, it's always people make their free zone decision based on an Instagram ad.
If you could describe business setup in 2025 using one emoji.
Do you know the puzzle emoji? It looks confusing, right? But makes sense when you align with the pieces.
Before we end this episode, always remember that incorporation is just an entry ticket. What shapes long-term success in the UAE is the ecosystem of rules that is behind the license.
Exactly. Once you understand the regulatory framework and you align your business strategies with it, everything else falls in place.
Brilliant insights, Nihas. To our listeners planning their next move here in UAE, always remember that strategy builds ideas and regulations builds future.